Grace. How are you today?
Thanks, Len. Doing pretty well. How are you?
Not so bad. I'm going to be asking you some questions to share with our membership about what you're doing, and so I'm going to get started if it's okay.
Sounds good.
First
Let's get
question is,
started.
how did you decide to enter the field of coaching and/or clinical psychology?
Yeah, so I'm a counseling psychologist by training, and been doing more clinical work for most of my career, and mostly in the recent, I want to say, 2 to 3 years. Probably I think close to 3 years now because of my previous employment. I was a director at a university counseling center in a startup university, ed tech intersection. I got more management experience and became really interested on the organizational level of how change can be created and really be on a larger scale. And so from there on, learning more about consulting work and coaching, coming along with that and making the shift from clinical work to the more org space and working with managers and leaders. So that's kind of a little backdrop as to how I got there. And I've been a senior consultant with a boutique consulting firm called Len in San Francisco. And since I was in the Bay, and Eugene, who's the lead of that group, has been amazing. So I've been learning a lot and doing a lot.
Great, great. So that leads into the next question. Would you please describe your client base and how you have attracted these people into your practice?
Sure. So I think there is a portion of the folks that I've worked with that are more about DEI work, so diversity work, doing workshops and training, and a little bit of coaching with that as well. And so I think that aspect is part of my specialty, and so it's something that I bring to the table and clients look for with why they want to work with me.
Great.
And then the second part, I want to, I think, actually talk about my clinical work a little bit because I think it flows into the coaching piece. Is I tend to focus on this broader concept of I guess how can we bring our best selves into whatever arena that we're choosing, whether it's relationship or career. And so sometimes my clinical work has a coaching element too, because clients will bring up the work piece and more career development and how they can grow in that.
Great. Yeah. I find personally that it's very difficult to do one or the other, that they flow in between each other. And that's
Right.
true. So having said that, what are the characteristics that contribute to a successful coaching/clinical practice, from your opinion?
Yeah, you asked what are the successful
Yeah, what are the
attributes?
successful characteristics that you might present that contribute to a successful coaching and/or clinical experience or practice?
Okay. Do you mean just kind of my style, or you mean in general for somebody to
Yeah,
engage
like
in coaching or
do
clinical work?
you yeah, stylistically, and when do you when does your clinical sense require you to probe, or more importantly, how do you use those skills in your practice?
Wow, that's such an incredibly broad question.
And you answer it any way you want.
Sure. I think I I'm a well, I think there's two levels to it for me. I really enjoy the analysis of breaking down complex problems, and I think there's I bring this to the org strategy high level piece as well as the coaching element, helping somebody or clinical element, helping somebody turn something a vague or an abstract question like my self-esteem or self-worth or my quality as a leader into more tangible pieces, right? And breaking that into things that we could work with. So I think that's kind of one level, just that's my brain food, if you will. I really just enjoy that. And then the other piece, I think there's intuition.
Yes.
Connecting with somebody on a more emotional level or gut level to sense the room, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
My work is fully remote nowadays. So I think that's interesting to how do I sense the room and get that gut reaction through a screen. But I think ultimately kind of fundamentally the same, right? Trying to get to know somebody on that deeper intuitive level.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. I have a question on that a little further in terms of intuition, but we'll get to that in a while. But I really do agree with you that at some point your analysis needs you to take a leap of faith in a particular direction, and that usually is intuitively driven. That's the way I do it as well.
Very cool.
So anyway, so if you were to look at all of that, what are the most important behaviors or initiatives that you would suggest to a member who wishes to expand or start a business for him or herself in the field?
Goodness. Well, I'm rather new myself, so I'm just trying to think about my experience in the past 2 or 3 years. I think a big piece, and I owe a lot to other SCP members who have had really engaging conversations with me, who wanted to help illuminate, something, essentially this question that you're posing, like, what do I need to do? Or how could I make this work for me? I think you pointing out, on those two levels, right? The analysis and the intuition.
Right.
For me, the analysis part, really getting to know what the market is, like what the scene is, right? Some sort of knowledge base of what the consulting world is about. I think a small example is I remember attending the Midwinter conference one year and seeing all the different tables for assessments.
Right.
And just feeling a little overwhelmed, like there's so much, and just taking all the pamphlets and wanting to learn about everything.
Yeah.
So doing your research and really getting to know what's out there. But then at the end of the day, coming back to intuition, and this, I think this is the piece of advice that I was consistently receiving from folks, is do what feels good to you.
Yeah.
Do what you are passionate about. There's so much out there. You have to be able to prioritize something, and coming back down to what feels like is something that perhaps you can uniquely offer, or that you can offer in the best way given who you are, and not just like your skills and knowledge, but who you are.
Yes, I think that's so important for the relational aspect of between you and your client. At some point, your authenticity really creates the desire on the part of the candidate or the person you're consulting to trust you.
Absolutely.
And so true. And I think you're right on the money with that. So having said that, what aspect of your practice do you find the most rewarding?
I think in both the clinical and the coaching realm, for me, is that seeing that spark of insight in folks and making the connections. And also, once they realize something, being able to see themselves move forward, grow in some way. And, from the first meeting to the sixth meeting, even if there's only these many weeks apart, you can see the difference. Something in their mindset, in their mentality, something a little bit more balanced, something in their behavior, perhaps sometimes tangible, sometimes more of a feeling, but just seeing movement. I think that feels really rewarding to me, and that's what keeps me engaged in the work and keep going.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you on that. It's like it's a two-way street. You're getting feedback, and that's a type of reward in itself. in addition to whatever the monetary issues may be.
Yeah.
So this is the one on intuition.
Hmm.
To what extent does the role of intuition play in the success of your practice?
Wow, this is actually a question?
Yes, I just made that up.
Wow. No.
No, actually, it was on the sheet, but I had thought about it earlier because I use it myself, and so do you. And so there you go.
All right. All right. Say that for me again. Let me think on that.
To what extent does the role of intuition play in the success of your practice?
Hmm. Yeah, what a great question. I think because I am probably naturally lean toward intuition in my decision making,
Hmm.
it's that is kind of part of me being my best self, so to speak. If
Yeah,
I make a head decision, it comes off kind of not grounded,
yeah,
surface, or objectively it might look fine, but I just don't feel good about it.
right, right.
It's not. It's like you're not on solid footing.
Yeah,
So I think with any of the major and even minor decisions around my practice, what the logo looks like, what the name is, what are the colors, do I do I want to focus on being active on Instagram, or do I want to be on LinkedIn or take a break, or
yeah,
I just remember when I first started my individual practice, because I had other stuff going on like with Delan or with work before, but I started my own practice this past October,
hmm,
2020.
hmm,
So that's very recent. And I just remember after I quit my full time job and started my own practice, the next few months, it's like I was chasing my own tail and telling myself, like, I have to work hard. I have to work
yeah,
X number of hours a week. And then I think at some point realizing when my intuition finally kicked in, rather than, head of like the shoulds, or emotionally more about the anxiety, I realized, you know what? My priority right now is just to get this figured out. I don't have to do a million things or learn a million things and
yeah,
know everything all at once.
yeah.
And just it'll be okay, and it'll get me more on solid footing just to focus on this one thing.
Yes,
Right?
I agree. It's like, it's very unique. Every situation is very unique. And to kind of give all of your attention to that process and almost let the client lead you in a direction that is of interest to them or that they're struggling with is a way to follow that road and to express your opinion and express your skills in an area that is of need. And that's where your own intuition guides you as to where you should go. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's very true. And do you feel happier when you do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just so much more relaxed,
Yes.
and of course, when we're anxious, we can't do our best work either.
Yes. Exactly. I think that's absolutely
Hmm.
true. Finally, what are the unique aspects of the work you're doing? That's the first part of the question. The second is there anything specific to your areas or country or culture on engagement and projects that you would like to share?
Yeah. So this is actually still something that I'm trying to play around with a little bit more. In my clinical practice, what I've been explicitly advertising is that I marry the wisdom of Buddhism with the science of technology, science of psychology. Sorry,
Mm,
and that's the essence of my approach. So bringing this philosophical lens and tangible practices such as mindfulness
yes,
from Buddhism with psychology, more evolutionarily or behaviorally or cognitive neuroscience pieces, and
yeah,
combining them together.
right.
And I've been trying to figure out how to do that in the org piece
Mm,
and more, business realm of things. It's worked beautifully with folks that I work with, either through therapy or coaching, as in like life coaching.
Right.
And as I mentioned earlier, they often my clients will bring some sort of work-related thing to it, so it feels like executive coaching in many ways sometimes. But to how do I, so the question that I have around now is, how do I be explicit and talk about that directly in the org piece as well, in executive coaching? And that will kind of narrow down the pool of folks who feel like they would be a good match for me.
Right.
But, that's also what would bring me happiness and joy. Right.
Yes.
So, yeah, so kind of a mixed answer there of like, this is something that's unique.
That's very much what I was asking about, because, if your personality and your belief system and your religious belief system, philosophical belief system is really commands so much of your attention, why not use that with the science that we've been trained in to drive home the message, and in that way be directive and influence your client. And I think that's very authentic. And
Thank you. Yeah.
It's the way I think it should be. So good for you.
Thank you. I just have to figure out how to talk about it in a more succinct way.
Well, you really started to talk about it quite nicely.
Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of our conversation, and the whole idea is to kind of share knowledge with members and to understand a little bit more about what our international members are doing. And so I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Len. It's been a pleasure.